everyone.
Hello, everyone. We have six. Come on up. Let's get close to each other within comfortability. If you're comfortable where you are, you don't have to move. I suppose it just feel weird talking to six people spread across the entire room.
It's Cabin's room.
Yes.
All right. Well, I'm Cersei Moss McDonald. I'm here to help moderate this conversation today with Aaron Campbell, who's here from Houston, Texas.
Close, Dallas.
Dallas, Texas.
Dallas.
All right, Dallas, Texas. Well, welcome, and thanks for coming all this way to tell us about your voice acting experience and career, and whatever else you might want to talk to us about.
Yeah.
So, if any of you have any questions, we've got one.
I was a voice actor at HC Media.
Oh, is that right?
I was trained by Tiffany Stearns.
Oh, all right.
Oh,
We have
cool.
other voice actors. You know that name, Tiffany Stearns?
I've heard it. Well, I guess I'll just start a little bit about me. So, like you said, my name is Aaron. I've not always lived in Dallas. I didn't start voice acting professionally until about 4 years ago. I lived in Branson, Missouri for my entire life until I was 26. And then I moved to Dallas because I wanted to pursue acting full time. I got my master's degree in acting from SMU. And I jumped feet first into the voice acting world. I got a voice demo done. I sent it off to Funimation at the time. They called me in to do some auditions. I auditioned. And I started getting cast in little small bit parts, which we call walla, which is essentially groups of 4 people in a booth screaming into a microphone. It's like all the background noises, all the people going like, "Gah! Gah!" screaming and like, all that stuff you hear in anime and English dubs, that we call that walla. And that's in almost every anime you're gonna find. You know, there's gonna be several walla cues. If it's like a big battle scene, like One Piece has so much walla in it, it'll make your ears bleed. But that's how I started, and Cliff Chapman, who brought me in originally, who's the voice of Bakugo in My Hero Academia, he was the first director I worked with. And I worked on a show called Darling in the Franxx, and then I worked on, I can't remember what the name of the second one was, but those 2 were the first 2 shows I worked on ever. And then I auditioned. Jade Saxton called me in, and she had me audition for the role of Nakano in the Helpful Fox Senko-san, and that was, I hadn't heard anything for like 6 or 7 months after I did those small bit parts. And I got cast as Nakano, which was the lead in that show. And from there, I've been really lucky. I've been able to do a lot of it. I'm 154 now, 154 shows in. So I've done a lot in the last 4 years. And it all kind of happened suddenly. But everybody's journey, to get to where they are is different. I think having a master's degree and taking the 3 years of my life when I got down to Dallas really helped me as an actor learn how to hone my craft in a way that helped bring me to the level that I wanted to be at to pursue voice acting professionally. Because I had an idea of what it was supposed to be. At first I thought it was just a bunch of characters, it's like, oh, I can do like a Mickey Mouse impression, or like a Gollum impression. And it's so much more than that, it's you as the character, and it's not just making a funny voice for these characters. And it took me a while to learn that, but I've learned a lot since then. 4 years of working in anime, you learn a lot about the different genres, kind of like what's expected of you as an actor. And it's something that has been a lot of fun to work on. And I'm really excited for the summer season. We just had some auditions, so I'm hopeful for the summer season to see if there's anything cool that comes out of that. We never know. There's a lot of really talented people that work in the anime industry. So some seasons you may get cast, some seasons you may not get cast, and that's just part of the fun. And the cool thing about the voiceover community, though, that is not talked about a lot, is like how supportive everybody is of each other. So even if you don't get cast for a couple seasons, like everyone is still always there and super supportive of you. And they're like, hey, it happens to all of us. We have dry spells, We have spells like where you can cast a lot, like this last season, for example, like I didn't think I was going to be in anything, and then within like a week and a half, I was like, I get cast in this show called Tomodachi Game, and I get cast in the show called Heroines Run the Show as a lead character, and then I get to announce my One Piece role that I've been working on for 6 or 7 months. So it just seems like you're working a lot, but yeah, I couldn't ask for more from voice acting. So. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question about
Yeah,
that?
for sure.
Because 154 roles, that is a lot of individual discrete voices. So what's your process around finding a voice for a character?
Right, so the first thing you're going to get as, because you don't know what you're going to be called in for a lot of the time. Sometimes there are characters and you're sent specific audition sides, which are, a side is a picture of the character, a character description, what that character is supposed to be like, and then some lines. And also in the lines there could be reactions and things like that. So you don't get that all the time when you go into the booth. It's like you don't know what you're going to be called in for, unless of course you know that you're the lead character or supporting character, and they let you know when you're cast. But sometimes my agent, who kind of helps me facilitate my schedule, she says, hey Aaron, they need you for an hour and a half for Tomodachi Game and Aoshi. And I'm like, oh, okay, I've never been in Aoshi. I have no idea I don't know what my time's going to be split up as, so I'll go do my show that I know I'm doing, and I go into the new room, and I get in the booth, and the director gets on, they show you the little bit of the screen, and they're like, all right, you're playing this character, he's, as you can see, he's got kind of a more mature look, he's probably in his 30s, he's really angry at this kid, he threw the ball at him. And then they play the little clip, and you get what we call the preview, which is, you get 3 beeps in the J, which is the Japanese, and you watch this preview through the character's scene, or however much of it the director thinks you can do at once. And so it'll go beep, 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 and on the 4th one, where the 4th beep is supposed to be, that's where your character starts talking. Whoops, I smacked the microphone, look at me, bad voice actor. So I don't know what they look like until I watch that. I can't preemptively come up with a voice. And so you just have to make a decision in that moment, okay, if they look mean and gruff, they're not going to have a very youthful voice. You know, it's something that kind of comes with learning on the fly, I would say. It's the things that I look for as a voice actor that other people may not do, I always look at a character and I say, okay, what are this character's physical features that I can kind of relate to? And okay, for example, Sparrow in One Piece, he's got his tongue out, that's a part of his character. His tongue is always hanging out of his mouth. I listen to the J, the Seiyu in the J talks a little bit in the back of his throat, and it doesn't look like he really opens his mouth a lot when he speaks. He's always got that mischievous smile, so I incorporated that into my audition for him. And his physicality, the way that he's just so big and pompous compared to some other characters in One Piece. I was like, okay, so let's see, what happens if I bring my mouth corners to the side, move it to the back, and then there he is. And he stays there for the majority of his lives, and he doesn't move unless he gets down. Which he does sometimes, you know, and having the, in the booth, whenever I play Sparrow, he's always got his cane, his candy cane that he uses to, use his devil fruit power. And so I always have an invisible cane that I carry with me. You can't hit the microphone, that's a no-no when you're voice acting, you know, you're not allowed to smack it. But you can get physical with it, and that's what I suggest people do when they're playing characters. Because if you're kind of stoic and you're supposed to be giving life to these characters that are otherwise inanimate, you can't, on stage when we're acting, you know, we have our bodies, on film we have our bodies, but when it's just you and the microphone, all you have is that. So everything has to be fed through the microphone, and the audience has to be able to pick that up. And so having even physicality, when you're doing that, people can hear the physicality if that makes sense.
So if you're in a fight scene, are you like, sitting away from the microphone so you don't punch it? Are you actually like kind of going at it?
Yeah. There was a session a couple actually 2 weeks ago. I was doing a Walla for Skeleton Knight from Another World, or Skeleton Knight in Another World, and there was like a battle scene, and there was a guy in the background who was like doing some like Dragon Ball Z kind of punches, and so it would, if I was like ha, it would look weird. So I went, but you gotta like really get into it, and if you don't really like give it the full punch effect, and like, if this happens a lot in anime where like somebody's talking and then they get stabbed and then they just die. And it happens a lot in certain shows, and it's like, oh, it was me the whole time, the secret spy, and they like wipe off the blade. But if somebody stabs you when you're talking, you can't fake it, otherwise it sounds fake. You have, so if I ever get stabbed, which I did the other day in a show, it's you don't get to say that a lot, so you don't get stabbed every day in your job, but like if somebody like actually were to like stab, I go, it's, otherwise you're gonna get like a fake like, and you can smell that as an audience member. As somebody who's watching a show, you're like, ooh, like that doesn't sound real. Or like, and another thing is that with anime, it has to almost be bigger in a lot of ways, because it's animated in a way to where if it's not big, certain things, it comes off as fake as well. So you can't be too small, you can't be too big either. You have to be like right in that sweet spot of reality and fakery, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
It's such a weird thing to explain, because it's something that comes with like watching subs and dubs and like seeing what the seiyuu did, or like what other voice actors have done, and trying to find that sweet spot, because it's not something we do in real life. Every time I drop a bottle, I don't go, I don't do that. Or whenever I pick up, whenever somebody comes in the room, I don't go, like I don't make those noises. But in Japanese, it's animated that way to where like the mouth opens, and if we don't do anything, it looks strange.
You haven't in real life adopted any of those vocal mannerisms, because I know that just by watching anime, I sometimes like notice I've got that little hunter grunt that they do a lot.
Yes. Yeah. No. It's not. That's those the reactions, or as we call them, reacts in the business. That's not something that I'm still finding my way into, like what makes like a good react, a good react, and most of that is like the hard ones are, the easy ones are like clenched teeth, CT. So that's when like somebody does something that you don't want them to as the character, so the character will go, where they bare their teeth, or like the another trope that I love doing is like the nervous, like the those ones are fun too, where the characters are like trying to struggle to find the words to speak, and they're things we know about as humans, but we just don't do in real life, and I tried to be super realistic with it when I first started voice acting, and the director's like, yeah, let's not do that. Let's try to be like as unrealistic with those reacts as we can, and like it's a different world, and so that's something I've like come to learn about. Yeah. I'm interested to hear. Yeah.
Which member of the Charlotte family is the strongest?
Okay, well, Katakuri is the strongest, I think. But I mean, being like playing Perospero and like knowing that he is one of like the only children that makes it as far as he does in this story. Of course, Katakuri fights Luffy, but Perospero makes it as far as he does because he's not only really good with his devil fruit, but he's a tactician and he knows how to use it. And like none of his other brothers or sisters do. It's like him and Katakuri are, in my opinion, the two strongest Charlotte children. Now, obviously, people are going to argue there's like Cracker or Smoothie or Oven, but they don't make it nearly as far as Peros Guerrero does. So I would say Katakuri and then Peros and then all of his other brothers and sisters. However many there are, 80, 90, something of them. Yeah, that's a good question.
So can you tell me something about like the voice acting toolkit? And do you also do other kinds of acting that has another kind of toolkit?
Yeah, so before I started doing voice, I did a lot of stage, and I still do film, and I do commercial work. So like voice acting is like the fun stuff I get to do, right? I don't make my entire living off of just doing voice acting. I wish, but as an actor, you know, I'm open to all kinds of things. So I did a lot of stage pre-pandemic. I haven't done as much stage since the pandemic started. Actually, none. I haven't done any. And the last play I did was Hamlet. And that was a lot of fun because I got to play Hamlet. And it was a lot of text, but the main difference in like the toolkits you have as an actor on stage versus voice is like your body is the main thing. You know, whenever I'm delivering a soliloquy on stage, like the audience can see me as a character processing as the character, what I'm doing. You can't see that other than the animation that is given to you if you're doing voiceover work. So you have to find a way to make those internal thoughts or the process of working through a problem as a character on stage. You have to find a way to translate that into vocal technique through the microphone, which is similar in some ways because we do when we're thinking through problems as humans, we have a particular sound cadence. In anime, it's a little different because you have to match the flaps that the character has if they're on screen. If they're not on screen, if they're off screen, that's great because then you get to really act. For example, if like the shots from the back of the character and they're talking but they have no mouth flap movement, you're really allowed to use your language and your vocal timbre, how fast, you know, the sound cadence, all that stuff to work through issues. And the couple ways you do that is by like putting stress on certain things. Like if I'm an anime character, what is the most important thing in this line? If I were to do that on stage, it comes off as kind of fakey. Stage is a little smaller, but bigger because you have your body. You don't have that when you're in the booth. That's the main thing. I would say like body is the main thing you have, the difference between stage, film, commercial versus voiceover work is that you're allowed to really get expressive with your body and like the audience can make, they can infer things based off the way you move. And the only way that you can do that is with your voice in voiceover. And so that's like the main thing. I would say apart from that, it's really, you do a lot of character work for like a stage character that is pretty much never going to change. You know, every night you're gonna go on and you're gonna do the same part, you're gonna do the same role, and you're gonna have your own story for that character that you've created for yourself as an actor. Like, I go on, I do my thing, and the performance may be a little different every night. My character may be feeling different things. Versus voiceover, it's like you only get the one shot to do it, really. You go in, you record that part, and then you leave it alone. Then you're done with that forever. Like there are portions of certain shows here and there where I'm like, man, if only I would have recorded this on a different day, it would have been a different performance entirely. And yeah.
Do you think Charlotte, Lindland, and Hideout form in the Lions?
They do in Wano, yeah.
Wano Kingdom?
Yeah, but I think, I'll be interested to see where Oda takes that story, for sure. But I do think that having all of that stuff and being able to pull selectively from particularly stage experience has helped me a lot. The physicality portion specifically, because when you're talking into the microphone, you have to have about this much space between you and the microphone as the voice actor. So I'm not really allowed to move my head, but I can move the rest of my body while I'm talking. So that's why I say physicality is important, because you can't be like crazy with your head and do things. Like your head has to stay here, but the rest of your body can be doing whatever, as long as you're focusing your mouth towards the microphone, which is different on stage because you're allowed to talk to anything you need to, whether it be the audience during a soliloquy or your partner on stage. And so that took some getting used to as well. And then I think the other thing is, reality versus anime. There are two different things. And a lot of that comes from the animation versus like real life. We have internalized moments as humans that are externalized in anime, particularly with like moments where characters are like speaking under their breaths, and then they have like an explosive moment where they have the little text bubbles appear above their heads and like they're smoking. We don't do those as humans. We don't have that kind of stuff. We may have those thoughts inside, but it's very rare that we're allowed to like really use those in like a public setting. Or if we do, people will look at you and be like, "What are you doing? Why are you this way?"
Right.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you could describe kind of your typical work day and kind of set the scene for us. Are you by yourself? Are you online, in person? Like, what does it look like for you, just your daily work life?
Yeah, so it's changed a little bit. So, and then it's changed back. So prior to 2020, it was all in studio, and you would go in. So the way they have the room set up is like, imagine this little table is a wall. You have the engineers and the engineer and the director over on the other side of the wall, and the engineer is the one that's placing all of this stuff. The director is the one that's giving you instruction, telling you about who the character is, where they are, anything important you need to know about the scene you're recording, and then they're giving you direction based off your initial performance to tell you like, can we slow it down a little bit, need it faster here, hit this word for me if you could. And then on the other side of that wall, this big glass wall here, is the actor with the microphone. And you have two monitors. You have one with the script, and you have the other with the Japanese animation. So on that little thing is a little time code, and it plays so you know where you are in the story. And on the right side is the script, or left side, depending on what studio you're in. And it has your characters' lines highlighted, and it goes like one line, it skips a couple other character lines, and you have your line, skips some more lines, your lines. And every time you hear those 3 beeps, that's when you know it's your character's turn to speak. And so there's 3 people in that room, the engineer, the director, and then you. And then you just do the scene and you finish your session, which would be generally the full amount of the character lines in that session or the episode. And then you leave for the day. Other directors would pull you. That was how it was pre-pandemic. Pandemics began and we started recording from home. A lot of people, myself included, for the longest time we recorded in blanket forts and our closets.
A blanket fort.
It was terrible. It was terrible because like every time I got in the closet, I'm like, oh no, I have to like set up my clothes again and like set up this blanket fort with like these little clamps. It was annoying because like that happened every time you had a session. And originally, we were recording on iPads, and then we stopped doing that. We started recording with Source Connect because it was easier.
So we being you and Molly Cersei?
Yeah, well, all voice actors.
All voice actors.
Yeah,
Okay, all right, because like you and Molly.
Yeah, Molly as well.
Yeah.
But that's how we did it for a while. But I would say like 90 at the beginning of the pandemic, we weren't really using Source Connect. So like 90% of the voice actors were recording through a microphone into an iPad that was given to us, and we were the engineers, and that was crazy. It was a crazy time, but like we got the dubs out, like that's how we finished My Hero Season 5, was all that was done from home. And then once that was over, we started playing with Source Connect. Funimation was really, really cool. They helped people set up their Source Connect studios kind of from home, and I bought, because I was done recording the blanket for it, because it took like 45 minutes to set up, and it was like, it could range from like a 5-minute session to like a 2-hour session, and I didn't want to keep doing that. Every time I got in the closet, stuff would fall down, I'd have to redo it. The weed whacker guy, you could always still hear him outside, and so I invested in a Studio Bricks, which is like a more permanent studio. And I bought a microphone, a Neumann Thielen 103. We got a computer set up with 2 monitors, and from that point on is when we started recording exclusively, like in our home studio, at home. Yeah. And without that, it would have been very, very hard for us to work at all throughout the pandemic. But because I invested the money when I did, I was able to get it, and I still use it. Like, we don't use it nearly as much anymore, mainly for auditions. Because now everything is back in studio. Crunchyroll, Funimation has now become Crunchyroll. They are combined, and now we go back in studio for things, which is great because I had to be my own engineer and like play with the gain while I was yelling or whispering into the microphone for scenes. Sometimes there would be source connect dropouts. But now that we go in the studio, like there's the director and the engineer, and all I have to focus on is performing. I don't have to do anything else. And there's 12 studios too, so we have like anime going from 10 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, almost in every studio.
Wait, 12 studios, is that 12, like that's all under Funimation and their whole, like all the different brands that they represent, all the different animes that they represent? So
in the Crunchyroll house, we have the 12 studios. Outside of that, there are other studios. Sound Cadence Studios is one that they work with to license other things that like maybe we can't record in studio where there's not enough time or room. Bang Zoom is another one that had like they recently they've done Jujutsu Kaisen, they've done like Mob Psycho 100, Demon Slayer. Like Bang Zoom's out in California. All that stuff was prior to the Crunchyroll and Funimation merge. And so like they will continue to do those dubs, and they'll get some, from what I understand, they'll get more dubs as well. But those studios work in contract with Crunchyroll, and but a lot of it is being done back in studio now. So all those studios will be used for things like One Piece and Shadow's House Season 2 and like any other anime you can think of that is coming out this next season. There's going to be a lot that's done in studio, and it's from an engineering standpoint and like a quality control standpoint, it's easier to get everything done on time for like the deadlines that they have, because if there are dropouts, from home studios, people have different microphones. There's all kinds of different things that were happening. Now, not to say that it can't be done, because it can definitely be done. And like we did it for a while. It's just easier on the people that have to put everything together at the end for things to have like a cohesive thing. It's like this is the standard quality of every single studio. So there's no microphone changing out. There's no weird technical glitches, and if there is, they catch them right then. It's not in post-production. Things like that.
Makes sense. So less of a collage and more kind of cohesive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, you had a question?
So this kind of seems to be, my question may backtrack a little bit, but you mentioned how you go in and you only do your one scene and you go out. So there's no, I'm not sure if this is the right word, bloopers? Like in movies now they're have to retake scenes. Not that I'm aware of. I mean, we do mess up things occasionally, but it's not something that they like spend time being like, all right, that was really funny, let's put it down in the track somewhere. That we do have moments where we mess up horribly, and I'm like, well, that was a terrible take, and I just say that to the director. I'm like, how about I give that to you again, but not as bad as I just did it. And it's just anytime as an actor that I give myself permission to fail, that's a lot of times when my best work comes out, because I'm not constrained by trying to make something perfect. Because nobody is perfect as a human, and like trying to go in and do something perfect leaves so little room to actually play, which is what I think a lot of the profession is. It's like you go in, you play and you have fun, and that's what makes a really good story and really good characters, is when you have fun and that comes out in the work.
Well, speaking of those 154 characters, that to me seems like a big number. You were saying earlier that that's not that many, but going back to 154 credits, of all of those, which ones are the most fun that you've had?
I think the single most fun character I've ever played to date is Peril Sparrow from One Piece. He's unlike anything he's unlike anything that I normally do. Normally I get cast as like an idol boy, which I don't mind playing idol boys. They're fun, or high school type of characters, slice of life romance characters. I like playing all those, but I've never got to play a villain before. And One Piece means so much to me as like a human that when I had the chance to audition for Peril Sparrow, I was like, I'm gonna do everything that I can in this audition, to bring what I think the character deserves to it. And I got really lucky and I got cast as him. But I think he's so much fun because he goes from like these insanely high highs to like these really low lows in like an episode's time, to where like he's on top of the world and then something terrible happens and he's got to find a way through it, or like Big Mom is going to kill him, and so trying to find his way through these different levels has been a lot of fun. And as the dub continues to be released, you're going to see some really, really fun stuff, I think, with his character, and I'm really looking forward to it.
So, wondering about what it's like for you as kind of an ambassador from one culture, translating the Japanese into the English. Just what is it like for you to be a bridge between the cultures?
Right, it's really cool. I mean, luckily I'm not the one that has to translate or write or do any of that. Like, the people at Crunchyroll that do that are amazing. They're so good at what they do, and it goes through a couple of stages before it gets to the actor, and it goes to the translation, and then the writers take the translation, and then they Americanize it, if you will. There's certain things here and there that are left out because there's not words for it in English, so they do their best to try to make it as Americanized as possible, so that the dubs make sense.
Right, so nothing's lost in translation.
Yes, yeah, and they've done such a great job with it recently, and my favorite moments are the ones where I'm going through the script, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is such like a good human moment in like both the Japanese and the English. And the cool thing is you get to hear, when you're recording, you get to hear the seiyu's performance during the preview, before you record your take on it. So you have an idea of what the tone of the scene is.
Do you understand Japanese?
No, I know a couple of words, but I know nothing beyond that. I can listen to it and be like, oh yeah, I've heard that word before, but I'm not by any means an expert. Like Nani comes up a lot, and I'm like, oh yeah, I know what that is, and but it's not something that I would love to learn. People like Brandon McGinnis, who's a voice actor, he is incredible. He knows Japanese so well. And he could be watching the preview and he'd be like, oh, I don't even need to see what the translation is. Like, I could just do it right now and give you something that fits the flaps.
Wow, right.
Yeah. I'm interested to,
You mentioned how you sometimes have very flush periods and very dry periods. When you have those flush periods, how many different roles could you play? And how do you keep them straight?
Yeah, so that's a good question. That's a very good question. It's depending on the week or the day, it can be hard. Especially in like a couple weeks ago, I had maybe an 8-hour day, which is a lot for voice acting. You get really tired even after doing 2 to 3 hours, and it was a lot of walla that day. So I was screaming, and there was a lot of fight scenes and background chatter and stuff, and that's a lot of improv that you have with the other people in the room, especially fight scenes get really bad. But if it's a character day,
you know, I just hope, sometimes I ask, depending on who the characters are, if I know they scream a lot in the episode, I ask like, hey, can we put the screaming towards the back half of the day because I don't want to scream at the beginning, and then have my character voice for the rest of the day and other stuff that's like maybe not screaming be affected by that, because that does happen, you know. And the great thing about it is that you're allowed to ask the directors for breaks. You can be like, hey, can I take like a few minutes to get some water, like just cool down my voice a little bit, because there are sessions where it is just, you know, 3 hours of screaming attacks or something. And that's like a really bad way to like mess up your vocal cords. And so like warming up is something I always do in the car on the way to the studio. It doesn't take anybody's time but mine. You know, I do like, and I do like, and humming is a really good way to warm up your vocal cords as well. I do that after screaming sessions as well for cool downs. If you hum, it helps lessen any kind of damage that you'll have on your vocal cords. Also, drinking room temperature water is good for sessions, not cold water. You don't want cold water because that tightens everything. It makes it to where it's more dangerous. It's not like something crazy is going to happen, but there have been instances of people drinking super, super cold water and having like a negative impact on their voice. But also, to answer your question specifically, getting into each individual character for me is a body posture thing. It's why I'm so big into body posture. It's like when I go in for a Paris-Bear session, when I have my cane, like I get into his position, and everything about the way that I'm talking and like my vocal placement changes because like, I know I'm going to be playing this character today. And then when I go in for heroines run the show, like ISO, I just, you know, I straighten my spine, I kind of have my feet planted in a way to where I'm fully grounded, because he's never really off balance. Sometimes characters are, and then when we're going through the preview, I'll give it like a dry take so that I get in the vocal posture of where the character has been for the previous 10 or 11 episodes. Sometimes there are things that happen where I maybe haven't played a character for, you know, it happens all the time, like a character hasn't been seen in like 3 seasons, and suddenly this lieutenant guy is back, Lieutenant 5A from 3 seasons ago, and it's like, oh no, what was the voice? And so they'll play a preview of like, oh, this is what we captured the last time we did it. Here's your reference, and you're allowed to ask for that as well. You'd be like, hey, can I get a reference on this lieutenant? I have no idea what he was like. I'm like, yeah, sure. They play it for you, and you can ask for it a couple times, you know, so you get back in the posture spot for it. But that's how I differentiate the different characters from each other. Is like, all right, do I remember how I was standing? Do I remember like the mental space I was in for the character for that day? Like, what does the character want in the scene? But mostly it's about like that vocal posture and making sure I can move my jaw, my tongue, my teeth. Well, not move my teeth, that would be very strange. But you know, just in a way to where I can get back to that spot that I recorded to before. And there are some days where I'm just super tired and I'm like, oh man, I don't know if I can do this. And I just move my jaw back to that spot and everything gets back to where it needs to be for certain things. I will say though, as a voice actor, a majority of the characters, at least that I get cast as, are a lot of like my voice. Like this voice right now is like a bunch of the characters, like 95% of the characters that I'll get cast as. Sometimes I'll have to do like a really deep kind of voice, something like this, you know, doing some kind of spy or something. Other times, you know, if I have to play like, and I do this when I have to do this, I have to play a child, like, I'll put my thumb on my forehead because it kind of gives me a spot to go to. Because if I were to just like go into my nose, it would sound as something different compared to kind of going higher up in my head voice. And I'm a little hoarse today from talking just in general all day, but those are just little things that I do to where Or if I have to play like a really big weird guy, I don't know. It's just different every day, and I think the main thing is vocal posture, and then asking for those references are huge. If it's like boom, 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 it's like character, 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 character. I'm lucky in that I haven't had a lot of like different voices for things in one day. It's like, okay, I'll have Paraspero, which is entirely different, or then I'll have Napoleon, which is like an entirely different character, you know. Those things, like I know exactly where they are in my voice. But that's how I get there. That's
so interesting. And I wonder about your master's training at SMU. What kind of like schools did you study, like Lecoq training, for instance, to like get this really embodied approach? And I love the irony of you're a voice actor, but you really rely on your body to create the voices.
So, oh man, we did so like the 3 years of my life that I spent in that master's program, I learned so many different techniques, and essentially what a master's program, or at least what the one at SMU is meant to do, is for you as an actor to pull from the things you like from the program and use those for your technique. So we do learn Lecoq. We learned Lecoq. We learned Grotowski. We learned, like Stanislavski. We learned Laban. We learned viewpoints. And those are all different kinds of acting techniques, So like the impulsory stuff is the stuff that I really took away from the program, because what the professors told me was like, every character in the world, no matter what character you played is, they have like two peaks. They have like the high peak and like the low peak, and like everywhere in between those, including those two spots, is where you can play as the character. So finding those spots and knowing when not to go, where to go over them and where not to, was something that really stuck with me. And the impulsory exercises where, let's say we have character A and character B. It's what do I want as the character A from character B? What do I want from them? How am I going to get what I want? If they're not giving me what I want in that moment, how do I get them to give me what I want? And so the way you do that, is you try different things every night. And it's why learning to fail was another big thing I took away, because not everything you do as a character, whether it's an anime or stage or film or whatever, is going to be successful. Right? Not everything your character does will be successful, because that's not the way a script is written. Your character will fail at certain things and they will not get certain things done, but you cannot let that affect you as the character, because your character, every character has a particular role to play in a show, and even in anime. And it's like, if your character does not have a goal as the character, then what is the point of the character in the show? Like, again, using One Piece, using Paraspero as like a thing for this, it's like, his goal is to ensure the safety of his brothers and sisters. And like his side, like, that's like his main goal, is like he's like the first child, the eldest child, he makes sure the ship and all the crew runs smoothly. And like, apart from that, like branching off of that main goal he has, it's like, how does he do that? What are the goals he needs to achieve to make sure that everything stays running on Whole Cake Island? It's like invaders eliminated, and it's like threats neutralized, and it's like mastering his devil fruit, and it's like a bunch of little branches come off of this one goal. And all characters have like that one goal, and they all have little tiny branches that kind of come off of that one. It's like a lot, right? I'm like, let me give you.
Well, it just sounds like a lot of you have to have a lot of emotional intelligence to be able to kind of unpack the motivation and then translate that into a vocal response that is authentic.
Right, and now the thing that another difference between stage and voice acting is, like, stage, you have time to prepare all that. It's like, all right, I'm gonna sit
Alright.
down, I'm gonna write down exactly what all of my goals are as a character, what my relationship is like to every character in the show, how long have I known them, what do I want from each one. When you go into anime, unless it's like really established and you've done like a lot of research, which you're not gonna be able to do for like 90% of the stuff you do. You go in that day, and it's like, okay, playing Farmer 5B, and my line is, give me that fruit. Well, I can't really, there's only like a couple ways to do this. I'm not going to get in depth on give me that fruit. I'm just going to say like, give me that fruit, and the only context you have is what's happening on the screen.
Is that true even for the lead characters that you play? Like, do you ever like read the whole script and then do the internal process, or is it always you're looking at a screen and kind of getting fed the visual, and then you translate that into your vocal performance?
Yeah, so we never get the scripts ahead of time. So the first time you read the script is when you get in the booth, and you don't get to read the whole thing. You see the section that the director has pulled up at the time, which is normally at the beginning of the episode or wherever your character enters. And you have like 35 seconds from the time you see that through the J, watching the preview, to doing it in English. So you don't have a ton of time. You have to make those decisions, and you have to have good instincts as an actor to like what is happening. And sometimes, if you're the first person to record, the only way you can do that is by making sure you're reading the person's line above you. Because that's the only information that you have, If they're not recorded yet, you don't even have an English voice to go off of. So you just have to imagine that they have said it a certain way, and that you're responding as the character to what they said in the certain way that you and the director think it's going to come out of the other actor's mouth. So it's a little complicated, but it's like once you get the hang of it, it's something that just kind of comes more naturally. The hardest thing isn't even the acting, in my opinion, it's matching the flaps. The flap matching and making sure that there's no mouth, like weird hitches in the middle of lines, which happens a lot. Sometimes they animate things in a certain way where it's like, okay, I haven't been on screen, I've had this paragraph, it's been nice, really good, all off screen, I can act, and then, oh no, they don't move the camera from this character's mouth for 1.5 minutes. And it just slowly like pans, maybe past other people's faces for like a couple of seconds while the mouth is going. And when there are little pauses, like you have to take the pause in English and then start back up again when the character opens their mouth. And luckily we have engineers to kind of help with that, but you have to make it sound natural. Otherwise there's going to be weird breaks when you're talking. And you can't have that, so the writers have to be really on top of it, and they are a lot of the time, but there are some times where there's like a rogue flap that happens like that, like 2 seconds after you're done talking. It's like, okay, but how do I get to that flap from the last couple of words? And the director's like, well, we can either try to rewrite it, or you have to like make it work, And so that's the hardest part for me still. Yeah.
Wow, that's comical. All right.
Do you all have any questions about anime and stuff in general? Yeah.
Well, I don't remember when you said in the beginning, but you said you wanted to be an actor. How did you get into the voice acting itself? I mean, did you like think, oh, I like animation, I'll give voice acting a try? Or were you scouted, or like how did that come to be?
So I knew I wanted to be a voice actor since I was in 8th grade. When I was in 8th grade, the movie that came out that I was like, it changed my life, was Lord of the Rings and the Two Towers. I saw Andy Serkis perform as Gollum, and it changed my life. I was like, how does somebody do this with their voice? And I watched it over and over and over, and I was watching like behind the scenes. Like, it was before YouTube was even like a thing, so like I had the DVDs, the extended DVDs, and I was like watching the extended, and I was like, oh, he's like moving with his body, and he's really putting himself in these shoes of like yes, everyone, such delicious. And I was like so taken aback by how cool it was. I started learning how to do voice impressions, and there is a difference, right, between like doing voice impressions and voice acting, and I didn't know that until I was like already like trying to become a voice actor. Because voice impressions are really cool, but a lot of the times you will not get hired to do like a voice impression of somebody. Like if they're looking for like that voice, they will just hire that person that does it. Sometimes there's like exceptions, like there's like weird parodies for things. I've never had an audition for something like that, but sometimes that's what happens. So I knew I wanted to be a voice actor when I saw that. I started learning voice impressions, and I did a lot of research. I went to conventions, I met with some voice actors, and I'm like, okay, like, I see that you do this. What is it that you do? Like, how did you get from like, oh, I think I may want to be a voice actor to like actually doing it? And they all told me the same thing. They said you need to get a demo reel, which is 60 to 90 seconds. Generally for animation, it's going to be like 90 seconds. That showcases you as an actor, and that's your voice, like you as a person. So like my demo reel, like I would lead with me, like this is my voice, this is my baseline right here. You don't want to start it off with something that's not you, because then directors will be like, well, I'm confused. Who is actually this voice actor? Are they this person who's, I'm not quite sure there at the beginning, or are they this person later, which may sound more normal? So always start with yourself, with your demo reel, and then you can do other characters and stuff. And when I say other characters, you don't want to do voice impressions. It's just like, you take these archetype characters, like scared schoolgirl, or like sultry man, or like these different kinds of archetypes, and you take the ones that you think that you are really good at, and you go, and you ship them all together. And say, this is my demo reel, and these are the characters that I think I would be cast as. And then you send that off to like Crunchyroll or agencies near you, and then you wait to hear back. I sent mine off to Funimation when I first moved to Texas, because they wouldn't take any out of Texas talent at the time, because you know it's hard to record. There was no Source Connect, they were using that. And then I heard back maybe like 6 or 7 months later, and I auditioned for Cliff, and then I started. So it's really about like getting your feet wet, making sure that you have a really solid demo reel to send out to people, because it is like your calling card. And if it's not your best work, if it's not your best foot put forward, there are some directors that like remember that, you know, and like they'll talk about it. They'll be like, oh, I heard a demo reel today and like it was not good. And they'll be like, really? Who did it? And they'll be like, oh, I guess this person. And so you really want to make sure you send out your best work when you get your demo reel done, and do research as well. My first demo reel that I got, I paid an exorbitant amount for, and it was not good. It didn't book me anything. The next demo reel I got, I paid 1/10 of the price for it, and it was what got me in the door at Funimation. So what I did to kind of like learn the difference was I went on agencies' websites to actors I respected, and I listened to their character demo reels. And I was like, oh, they have this kind of like character, like an army guy. And then there was like, oh, there's kind of like a funny guy in there as well. And so I took like little bits and pieces of like character work that I was like, oh, I think I could do a character that's similar to that. And that's the kind of sound that I like. And I wrote my own demo reel, you know, I wrote it, all the lines. I made sure I had specifics for the characters that I had. And then I got it produced in Dallas at a place called Dallas Audio Post. And because I'd asked some of these actors where they got their demo reels done. I was like, hey, I really like the sound of your demo reel. If you don't mind, like, where did you get it produced at? And then they'll be like, yeah, I got it at Dallas Audio Post, or I got it at this place. And if the actor like recommends it to you and you like their sound, like for sure follow that through, because there's some really, really good demo reel places and then there are some really bad demo reel places, and you just want to do your research before you spend any money on it. But a demo reel is like the way to start. It's your calling card, and from there, it's like the world is open. That's where you start sending stuff. Yeah, you in the back.
You said something that you don't get to see the script beforehand, and you just see it the day you're in the booth. Is there a reasoning for that, or?
Well, yeah, I don't know what the reasoning is. I don't know. It goes through a lot of like approval things, you know. But it wouldn't help us even if, because then, you know, if we got the script ahead of time, then the only thing we could do with it would to be like watch it in sub and try to match the flaps outside of the work. And they don't want it, and like that's not something they want us to do, because then as actors, you know, I think we'd get into our heads about it and be like, oh, this line needs to be performed this particular way. And I don't think that's beneficial at all. It's easier to go in and like cold read it and listen to what the director has to say and like make changes based off of what they envision the thing to be. For sure.
We have time for one or two more quick questions.
I'm just gonna go back to the demo reel we were talking about. What if you had like no like experience like beforehand?
Yeah.
You do like voices and acting.
I had
your own time?
zero experience before I made my demo reel. The demo reel can be anything you want it to be. And that's the great thing about it is when it's fully produced, it should sound like it is things that you have been in or things that you have done. And then when you get to the point in your career where you have things you can pull from to actually put in a demo reel, then you replace that demo reel with the demo reel of things you have actually done. And that's the way that everybody is getting into it now. It's like you have your fake demo reel, which is your demo reel that shows you as an actor. And you send that out to everybody. And it's, again, you need to write it yourself because you know yourself better than anyone and what kinds of characters you play. So writing it yourself, making sure you have individual characters that you know are going to be a pull for you. The director's going to be like, ooh, that sounds really good. That's the kind of character I need. Those kinds of things will bring you a long way. So yeah, you don't have to have any kind of experience for the demo reel. Just writing it yourself and making sure that what you want to present yourself as an actor is on that reel is super important.
Do you know Clifford Chapin?
Yeah, I love Cliff. I went to the Renaissance Festival with him a couple months ago. He's awesome.
Nice. Nice. All right, well, any last thoughts you would like to impart, please?
No. If you have Twitter, you can follow me on Twitter at @themanAaron. I post memes and food and anime stuff all the time. Mostly pictures of my dog Pancake, which is a corgi. So if he was here, if he was here with us, he would be here with us today if he could be. Yeah, and I'll be at the table today, tomorrow, and Sunday. So if you have any other questions, I'm always there to answer. I've got another panel more specifically on how to get into voice acting tomorrow. From 3 to 4, I think it is. And so we'll go over way more details on what I did and places to go. I'll give you resources, all that kind of stuff tomorrow.
All right, super. Well, thank you so much
Yes.
for coming and telling us all about your passion and your work. It's really lovely to have you. Welcome to Maine.
Yes, I love it here. I'm staying forever.
Oh,
I will eat all your lobster.
let's hope